أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على النبي الأمي العربي القرشي المكي المدني الهاشمي صاحب قاب قوسين محبوب رب المشرقين والمغربين، جد الحسن والحسين النبي الحرمين والإمام القبلتين والرسول الثقلين، الذين سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المرجومين المنتخبين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في العارضين روح وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء، واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه ومتقن خطابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الأخلاء مساء صلوات محمد اللهم صل على أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه ومتقن خطابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الأخلاء يومئذ بعضهم لبعض عدو إلا المتقين. مساء صلوات محمد وعلى محمد اللهم صل على محمد. In honor of Shuhadai Karbala, recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam, recite God loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Again, I'd like to start with appreciation for all those who recited before me. Inshallah ta'ala, may Allah increase their tawfiqat and increase the tawfiqat of the parents of the children who are training them in this way to recite for the service of Imam and Salam, for their increase in tawfiqat for all of them. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Sing here next to me, you have to be quiet. Recite another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. One of the first associations that a person makes in their life after they're born and they have some semblance of being able to talk to somebody, after their association, their family, which of course is a blood relation. This is one that you had by yourself, you had without having any choice in this matter. But the first relationship that you make with somebody that is out of choice is that of friendship. When you meet somebody and you associate with them, that is the first relationship that you make out of choice. And as you can see, you see all around the room, and we know this with our own experiences, that as soon as you're old enough to be able to talk, and you're old enough to be able to speak to somebody and communicate your feelings with somebody, you build this relationship. So that means that as far as relationship goes, it's one of the oldest relationships that we have. It's one of the oldest skills that human beings have, is that when you meet somebody or you associate with somebody, you want to find out whether this person can be your friend or not. So that means definitely that religion of Islam has something to say about this important relationship. And as far as relationship goes, then yes, religion of Islam has something very particularly interesting to say about this particular area. The Holy Quran talks about friendship, particularly we're using this word of friend, on 2 occasions, which is related to the word Khali is mentioned in 3 occasions, but 2 occasions which are relevant to our discussion. The first one is this ayat that I've recited in front of you. It's from Surah Zukhruf, which is the 43rd surah of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-Akhillah, the friends, the plural of Khalil. Al-Akhillah yawma'idhin, on that day, in other words, on the day of judgment, ba'aduhum li ba'din adu, they will be enemies of one another. The people who are friends of each other in the dunya, in this life, on that day, yawma'idhin, on the day of judgment, they will be enemies of one another, illa al-muttaqeen, except for the muttaqeen. The muttaqeen, they were friends in this dunya, they will be friends in the next life as well. They will be friends on the day of judgment as well. Muttaqeen will be friends of each other. But everybody else, they were friends in this life, they were friends in this dunya, they will become enemies in the next life. The other ayat are even more severe when they come to telling us about what are the consequences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again is telling us about the day of judgment. What will happen on that day? He says, وَيَوْمَ يَعَدُّ الظَّالِمُ عَلَى يَدَيْهِ يَقُولُ يَا لَيْتَنِي اتَّخَذْتُ مَعَ الرَّسُولِ السَّبِيلَ. On that day, the oppressor, the zalim, they will bite their hands and they will say, what would they say? If only I had taken the sabil as well as accepting the Prophet. This is in Surah Furqan. If only I had taken the sabil. They asked Ibn Rasulullah, what is sabil? He says the sabil is Ali Muhammad, the person who accepted Muhammad and then didn't accept Ali Muhammad. On the day of judgment, he will say, if only I had taken the sabil, if only I had taken the way that the messenger, that the Rasul told me to. And will it stop there? No, further on. Ya waylati, laytani lam attakhidh fulanan khalila, laqad adallani an al-dhikri, ba'da idh ja'ani wa kana ash-shaytanu lil-insani khadula. These are verses 27, 8 and 9 of Surah Furqan. That not only that, he will bite his hands and say, if only I had accepted Ahlul Badr as well as the messenger, Ya waylati, woe unto me, lam attakhidh fulanan khalila, if only I had not taken such and such person for a friend. Why? Because this person diverted me from the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and surely shaitan is one who takes one off the right path and towards the damnation. So that tells us in both of these verses, in Surah Zukhruf and Surah Furqan, tell us that this topic of friendship is very important. Because on the day of judgment, if a person has a good friend, then that person would be beneficial for him. But if he doesn't, then not only would he not be beneficial, but ultimately he would be harmful, he would be responsible in part for bringing him to the state that he finds himself in. So this is very important. In this regard, to help us on this journey, we find a hadith from our fourth holy Imam, Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu salam, who says that apparently this is an advice to his son, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. But, of course, we know that Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam is Imam, and Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam is also Imam. this advice that he's giving him, he doesn't need this advice. This advice is for you and me. He's giving this advice to his son to teach us two things. Number one is that this advice is for you. It's not for the Imam. Secondly is that fathers should give advices to their sons. When the Imam who's Ma'soom is giving advice to his son who's also Ma'soom, he's teaching us the way that the fathers should give advices to their children. In the olden days, people used to say, I heard from my father, or my father used to tell me, or my father told me this, or my father used to do this. Nowadays people say, I read on Facebook. Because the fathers don't talk to their children and the children don't talk to their fathers, therefore nobody says that I heard this from my father, because they never had a conversation with their fathers. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years have passed, and in our community maybe it's not so much. I remember I travel around a lot. I remember when I would speak to some of the people in different parts of the world, particularly in the US and in Canada and even in UK, when you go and speak to the people who are not Muslims and you say to them, when was the last time you spoke to your father? He will tell you, maybe 20 years ago I last spoke to my father. 30 years ago I last spoke to my father. I haven't spoken to him since then. So, Imam alayhi salam is telling us two things. The first of all, that look, this advice is for you about friendship. But secondly, that fathers should give advice to their sons, to their children. Therefore, the wisdom will be passed on. If they don't, then how would fathers expect their children to become good people, good human beings in society if they don't pass on these advice? So Imam Sajjad alayhi salam says that to his son, he says, oh my son, when it comes to friendship, when it comes to associating with people, when it comes to making somebody a friend, then don't associate with 5 types of people. There's 5 types of people whom you should not associate with. He says the first type of person that you shouldn't associate with is the kadhab, is the liar. Why? Obviously it's quite obvious, but the Imam al-Islam gives the example to highlight. He says because the kadhab, the liar, he's like a mirage. Whatever is far, he will show you to be near. And whatever is near, he will show you to be far. Because he's not telling the truth. And therefore you can't rely on him, he will not be helpful for you in times of need. Then he says the second type of person that you shouldn't associate with is the fasiq, is the person who doesn't observe the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't observe the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't observe the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he doesn't observe the wajibat and the muharramat, he doesn't follow that which is halal and haram. What would happen to you? You too would go onto that path of not observing halal and haram. Says the third type of person that you shouldn't associate with is the ahmaq, is the fool, is the person who is not sensible. Why? Because he will try to help you, but he will harm you in the process of trying to help you. That's why we have a saying in almost all the languages, in English, Urdu, Farsi, Arabic, we have the saying that a wise enemy is better than a foolish friend. Why? Because you know when the enemy is wise, then you know what he's going to do. But when the friend is foolish, you don't know what he's going to do. And when he tries to do something to help you, he will ultimately go against you. So Imam alayhi salam says you don't associate with that person. He says the fourth type of person that you don't want to associate with is bakhil, is the one who's stingy. Why? Because when you will be in time of need, he will be able to help you, but he won't help you. He will have the ability, he'll have the capability, he'll have the istidad to help you, but he won't help you because he's bakhil, because he's stingy. He says, and the fifth type of person that you shouldn't associate with is the one who cuts off relation with his family members, who does qat'a. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does la'nat on that person who cuts off his relationship with his blood relatives. And if you associate with him, that la'nat will come onto you as well. So Imam, these are the characteristics of the person whom you don't want to associate with. But what about the people that you do want to associate with? What characteristics, what sifat should those people have who you do want to associate with? For that, there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet. It's a very beautiful hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam says, Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. A believer is like a mirror for another believer. A believer, a mu'min, is like a mirror, is like a mir'ah for another mu'min. There's three sifat, there's three characteristics that a mirror has that a mu'min should also have. And that is the sifat that a person wants and needs in a friend. It says the first sifat of the mirror is that it doesn't deceive you. Whatever you are, it will show you that back. If there's defects in you, it will tell you about your defects. If there's beauty, it will tell you about the beauty. If there is someone like me who's not beautiful, it will tell you reality check. You know, this is what you are. But whatever you are, it will tell you that accurately. It will not hide anything from you. It says that is the first characteristic that you want in a friend. And that is the first characteristic that a believer should have for another believer. That he should tell you accurately what you are. If somebody just comes to me and praises me, obviously I will like it. But that person is not a good friend because he's not helping me identify what is actually being reflected from me. Until that person comes and helps me and tells me, no, this is something that you need to change and you need to improve. Right? Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says, that's the most favored person, most favored friend of mine is the one who points out that which I need to improve. Now Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam doesn't need anything to improve. He's teaching me and you that the person you want to associate with is the one who accurately tells you that this is who you are and this is what you need to improve and change. He says the second characteristic of a mirror is what? Is that the mirror is Ameen. When you go and look at yourself in the mirror and then you go away from the mirror, the next person who comes to the mirror, he doesn't tell him that last person who came, he had that spot on his face. No. That next person who comes, the mirror will just reflect that person. It will not tell you about the person who went prior or the one who's coming afterwards or all the other people who have shown their face in the mirror. Said, this is the second characteristic that a believer should have for another believer. That yes, in front of him, he should tell him this is your reality. But when he's gone, he should make sure he keeps his secrets. Shouldn't go and tell other people about his So these are the sifat that the mirror has, right? That it keeps the secrets, but it tells you the reality of what you are. Now in terms of friendship, there's some responsibilities that would go with it as well, of course. That if a person, so first of all we already know that if I associate with persons who will affect and not positively help my deen, then that will go against me. It will be negatively against me. So therefore I have to be conscious of that. Does that mean that I don't associate with people who are not Muslims or are not believers? No. It means that friendship is something else and associating and acquainting with people is different. Of course, we still have to associate with people who are not Muslims, as you heard before me. We have to take the message of Muhammad to everyone. So we have to associate with them. But here when we're talking about friendship, we're talking about people whom I can trust my life with. Who should those people be? These are the sifat of those people for whom Imam is telling us. Now, what that means from there, sifat that Imam Sajjad told us that we have to find friends who are truthful, we have to find friends who are smart, we have to find friends who are generous, we have to find friends who have good relationship with their relatives, and we have to find friends who are good of character. Why? Because all of these sifat, when we associate with somebody with these sifat, then they will come into us as well. Why? Because Imam Amirul Mu'minin says that if a person wants to be something, what should he do? I want to be muttaqi. Imam Amirul Mu'minin saying, if you want to be something, what should you do? I want to be muttaqi. Imam Amirul Mu'minin says, if you want to be something, then associate with those people who are that. If you want to be something, associate with the people who have that sifat, who have that characteristic already. If you associate with them, if you spend time with them, if you sit with them, you stand with them, you eat with them, you meet them frequently, then those sifat will come into you as well. For this, the ulama of kalam use an example. They say, why is this the case? That if you associate with somebody, or if you get near to somebody, those sifat come into you. They use an example. They say that the example is like that of the fire and the iron. So when you bring the iron closer and closer to the fire, it becomes softer and softer. And then eventually, the iron is consumed by the fire. It becomes part of the fire. Human beings are the same. If you go close to somebody, and you will become softer and softer until eventually you will become part of that characteristic that that person has. And having a friend is so important. It's so important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that I chose Ibrahim as a friend for me, as a Khalil for me. Not Ibrahim chose Allah as a friend. No, Allah chose Ibrahim as a friend. And the sifat of Hazrat Ibrahim as a friend was what? Was that he used to always go out and find somebody to eat with them. He would never eat alone. He would go out and he would find somebody and he would eat with them. He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made me his friend, and so I always go out and eat with somebody, until one day he brought somebody into the house and he said to him, say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So he said, who is this Allah you're talking about? Who is this Allah you're telling me to mention his name? I'm not going to mention his name. So Hazrat Ibrahim became angry and he said to him, get out from here. How can you eat when Allah is giving you rizq and you don't want to mention his name? Jibreel came down to Hazrat Ibrahim and he says, Allah says, for all these days I was giving him rizq. One day I sent him to you and you denied him. For one day I sent him to you and you denied him this rizq. For all these days I was giving him rizq, even though he doesn't believe in me. And for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala went to one stage greater than that, and he said that I made Ibrahim my Khalil and friend, and I made Muhammad Mustafa my Habib. And the difference between Khalil and Habib, what is it? The difference between Khalil and Habib is that Khalil, Ibrahim Khalilullah, he used to go out and search for people to come and eat with him. Holy Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Anas ibn Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrates that Holy Prophet of Islam, one day he sat down in his house, he cooked the bird, the quail. And this is called hadith, this hadith is called hadith al-tayr, because he cooked the bird and then he put it in front of him. And then he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Oh Allah, send me your most beloved person so I can eat with him." Hazrat Anas bin Malik is narrating. He says that Rasulullah made this dua, and then as soon as he made this dua, Ali ibn Abi Talib came to the door. When Ali came to the door, I said to him, Anas says, narrating himself, he says, I said to him, Rasulullah is busy. So he went away. Then Rasulullah made this dua again, that I want the most beloved of Allah to come to me so I can eat with him. Again Ali comes again. Anas says to him, Rasulullah is busy. So he went. Third time when Amir Muhammad comes, Prophet prays, Amir Muhammad comes, and Anas and Amir Muhammad are having conversation. So Rasulullah calls out from inside, he says, "Who's at the door?" Rasulullah asks Anas, he says, "Who's at the door?" So Anas says, "Ali ibn Abi Talib." So Rasulullah says, "Send him inside, he's the one who I've been waiting for." Now the hadith ends here. But here I always ask a question. Whenever I mention this hadith, I was not planning to mention this hadith today, but sometimes things come, and then you have to talk about it. But whenever I mention this story, I always ask that Anas, he was listening to Rasulullah make this dua. Right? That's why he kept saying to Ali, Rasulullah is busy, you go back. So, what would be the thing that you think would come into the person's mind, that if Rasulullah is making this dua and I'm listening to this dua, then I have an opportunity to go and sit down by the Prophet and say that you called the beloved, I've come. So this is a reminder for this hadith from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Don't make the fool your friend, because he didn't even think himself that he could have become the beloved of Allah if he went and sat with the Prophet. He was too busy sending Ali ibn Abi Talib back. Or if we change the words, we might say that enmity to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam makes a person into a fool. Recite salawat ala Muhammad. And this is the same enmity to Ali ibn Abi Talib that is mentioned in the ayat of Surah Furqan, that when that person would come on the day of judgment, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was asked, Ya ibn Rasulullah, who is this person who will say that if only I hadn't made this person a friend, Fulan or Khalila? So Imam alayhi salam says that one will say about the other that if I didn't make him my friend, I would not have gone astray from the path of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and therefore I would not be condemned today to go to hellfire, because I listened to him and I went away from the path of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Recite salawat ala Muhammad. But let's come back. Don't lose track of our discussion. That is regarding friendship. So now, as we mentioned in our previous discussions as well, that there's some responsibilities with everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has associated us to do and told us to do and made us imperative to do. There's some responsibilities. So similarly in this case, there's also some responsibilities. Responsibilities are what? That if somebody is a friend, then there are responsibilities towards that person. Imam Amirul Mu'mineen says. He says that if you want to test and find out whether a person is your friend or not, then you would find out on 3 occasions. On 3 occasions you would find out whether this person is your friend or not. He says the first one is when you are in a need. When you are needing him, does he come to help you? In English we have a saying, a friend in need is a friend indeed. This Amir Muhammad says that if you need something and this person is still your friend, usually people are friends because they want to get something from you. When you are in need, then you don't find them. The people are very few and far in between that you find who would be willing to help you. He says that is your friend who would help you when you are in need. He said the second thing is that when you are there, everybody says good things about you. But your true friend is the one who defends you behind your back. When you are not there, is he joining in the ghibat against you, or does he say, no, whatever you're saying is not right. You shouldn't speak about this person while he's not there. The ulama of akhlaq used to say, in their presence, sometimes people would praise a person who was not there. They would mention something good about the person. And they would say, don't mention this. They would say, we're not saying anything bad about this person. We're saying good things about this person. Ulama of akhlaq say that remove this habit from your life to speak about somebody when he's not there. Because to go from speaking good about someone to speaking bad about them is very easy. So ulama of akhlaq used to say, in our presence, don't talk about anybody when he's not there. If you want to talk about somebody, talk about them when they're there. Otherwise, don't speak about them. Even if you want to say something good, don't speak about them, because it's very easy to go towards speaking evil about somebody, speaking bad about somebody, speaking something, even if it's true, but the person will not like. This is also coming under the category of ghibat. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
دو موتر در جای دکترها پارک کرده در کار پارک. اگر هزار کی هستک لطفاً برای امور پاس کنن که شکایت میکنن. WV09PZD WV09PZD دیگه شام AJ59YEF AJ59YEF از در کس تدمندیش صلوات محمدی هر چیز زودتر موتر خدا لکنه.
Recite another loud salawat ala Muhammad. So he said that the person who is a friend, Amirul Mu'mineen says, he is a friend when you are in need, when he defends you behind your back, and thirdly, when he's still your friend after you die. After you die, he's still your friend. Why? Because the person who still speaks good about somebody after they die, that person, now there's no vested interest. Now he's dead. Now he cannot do anything for me because he's gone. If in his lifetime, if when he was alive, I had some vested interest that I'm doing good towards him so that he does good to me. But now that he's died, now that he passed away, he cannot do anything for me. This is why Amir Muhammad said this person is your real friend who does and considers these things in these 3 instances. Then Imam Amir Muhammad says that there's some responsibilities of a friend. What are these responsibilities? The first responsibility, this person, he should be consistent in and out. That whatever is inside should be on the outside as well. Whatever is thinks of me inside should be reflected on the outside as well. Whatever's on the outside should be reflective of the inside. People should be consistent about their behavior inside and out. Sometimes people will say, yes, inside I'm a very good person, but outside I don't want to do anything. I don't want to reflect anything on the outside of my life. I don't want to do any actions. I don't want to be responsible for any action. No. In Islam, the inside, outside should be consistent with one another. This is very important in friendship. So the second thing that's very important is that the person who is a friend should be helping the friend to doing towards good, towards acting in a way of obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to support that person to do things which are wrong. This is why associating with the right people is important. Why? Because if I'm associating with people who are doing good and who are good people and of good character, then I will also adopt that good character. I will be encouraged to do good deeds because of associating with them. If I'm associating with the wrong people, then those people would invite me towards doing things which are wrong or sinful or haram, and I would be influenced by that eventually. Sometimes people say, no, I can associate with anybody and I will not become influenced. Yes, maybe 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, I will not become influenced. But eventually, if I keep on associating with those people, I would become influenced. This is why choosing the people that I associate with is so important. Eventually, I would become associated. Imam says that a person who goes to places which would create doubt should not then be surprised if his reputation is called into question. If I go to those places, if I associate with those people who are doing wrongful things, even if I wasn't doing anything wrong. But people would see that this person, he came out of there. This person, he went there. He associates with those people. And all of this would affect the reputation of a person. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the reputation of a believer to be protected as well. Does not want the person to be affected in society, for people to think that this person, because he associates with these people, he's seen in a bad light. That also, religion of Islam does not want. Recite another salawat ala Muhammad. And friendship as a whole is so important that, as we mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Ibrahim as a friend. He chose Rasulullah as a friend. Imam Amirul Mu'mineen salatu wasalam tells us about friendship. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam is giving us this indication about how to choose friends, and this topic that I've chosen today is because I want to speak about Imam Hussain alayhi salam's friend. Why Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam's friend? That is mentioned in the Maqatil that each day would go past. The second day of Muharram that Imam Hussain alayhi salam reaches in Karbala, the 3rd day and the 4th day, and every day there would be news that more and more people are joining the forces of Yazid. And one night, Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha, she comes into the tent of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and she says that, oh my brother Hussain, every day we hear that there's an increase in the forces of Yazid. Every day there's more and more people joining the forces. So she says that, isn't there anybody who could come to our aid and to our help? Imam Hussain alayhi salam says that, Zainab, they are bought by the enemies, and batil, falsehood, can buy many supporters, but truth only has a few friends. Truth always, in every time, has only had a small number of people to support it. Why? Because truth requires sacrifice, and sacrifice, not everybody is able and willing to do that. Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha says to Imam Hussein alayhi salam that why don't you remember your friend Habib? Why don't you remember your friend Habib? That night Imam Hussein alayhi salam writes a letter to Habib. That night Imam Hussein alayhi salam writes a letter to Habib. This is very important because usually people say, I will go to Karbala if somebody invites me. Nobody was invited to Karbala except for Habib. Nobody was invited to Karbala except for Habib. Imam Hussein alayhi salam writes a letter. He says, he begins this letter saying, من الحسين الغريب إلى الرجل الفقيه حبيب ابن مظاهر الأسدي. He says this is a letter from Hussein al-Gharib, the one who has no home. This is a letter from Hussein, the one who has no home, for Habib إلى الرجل الفقيه, for a man who knows the religion, for a man who is an expert in the religion, for a man who knows the Sharia. Imam Hussein alayhi salam is telling us what? He's telling us that today religion of Islam is under threat, so I'm calling the man who knows religion. Remember that whenever Islam is under threat, it is the one who knows religion, the one who is the expert in religion, the one who is faqih, who would come to defend the religion of Islam. Imam Hussein alayhi salatu salam writes, he says, Habib, you know what my relationship with the Holy Prophet of Islam is. You know what my relationship with the Holy Prophet of Islam is. If you can come to my aid, then come to Karbala. That's all Imam Hussein wrote, and he sent the messenger. It's mentioned in all the books of Maqatil that the messenger left Karbala and he entered into Kufa. He got to the house of Habib, he knocked on the door. When he knocked on the door, Habib was about to begin his meal. Habib was about to begin his meal. He put down, the man knocked on the door and Habib asked, who is it? Man al-Bab, who is at the door? And the man replied, Ana Baridul Hussein, I am the letter carrier of Hussein. Habib left the food, he got up. He stood up, he went to the door. He took the letter and he put it on his eyes. And then he kissed it and he began to weep. He opened the letter. As he's reading the letter, he's weeping. Habib's wife comes into the room and she says, Habib, why are you crying? Why are you weeping? Why are you crying? He says, this is a letter from Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet. He says, what does it say? He says, Hussein has reached Karbala and he wants assistance. He wants me to come to him. Now, the situation in the city of Kufa is so bad and so terrible that a brother cannot trust a brother. Nobody knows who has been sold to Ibn Ziyad and who is still on the haqq. So, Habib's wife says to Habib, what is your plan? What are you going to do? Now Habib, he knows the situation, he tests his wife. He says, I'm thinking about it. The Maqatil say, every single one, that when he says, I'm thinking about it, Habib's wife, she throws off her jewelry. And she says, Habib, the grandson of the Prophet, the son of Zahra called you and you said, I'm thinking about it. If you don't want to go, give me your sword. I will go and defend the son of the Prophet. Habib says, I was testing you. He took his sword and he left. One of the narrations states that Muslim ibn Usaja, also a resident of Kufa, over 80 years old, he's in the marketplace buying dye for his beard. When Habib sees him, he says, Muslim, don't you know the news? He says, what is the news? He says, the news is that Hussein has reached Karbala. The narrative states that Muslim had the hair dye in the bowl. He dropped the bowl and he said, now this beard would be dyed without blood. Now this beard would be dyed with our blood. One narrative states all the routes out of Kufa are blocked up. Nobody can go anywhere. Nobody can come in. Nobody can go out. Habib is thinking to himself, what shall I do? How will I leave Kufa? He sends his servant out to outside the city of Kufa, tells him, take these horses, and now my land is outside the city of Kufa. Take this horse and tell the people, if somebody asks you, that I'm grazing the horses. The servant goes out and he's waiting there. Habib is waiting for a moment for him to see whether he can leave without anybody noticing. There's some delay in Habib coming. When he arrives by the horse, he hears the servant talking to the horse. He says, if my master Habib doesn't come, I will go on to you and go and help our master Hussein. Habib begins to cry. He says, what a time has come upon the family of the Prophet that a servant should say that I will go and help the master Hussein. Habib says to his servant, you are free to go. His servant looks at him. His servant looks at him and he says, oh my master Habib, for my whole life I served you. Now I have a chance to serve the son of Zahra and you're telling me to leave? Now I have a chance to serve the son of Zahra and you're telling me to leave? Habib and his servant and Muslim, they all go gallop towards Karbala. There's a dust in the air. The sand begins to fly. Zainab says to Fizza, go and find out who is it that has come. He says, go and find out who is it that has come. Fizza says, oh my leader Zainab, you're the one whom you remembered and the one you called upon. Habib, he has come. Zainab Salamullah alayha says, Fizza, tell him that I sent to my salam. When the salam reaches Habib, he throws off his ammama and he says, what a time has come on the family of the Prophet that salam should come to somebody like me. Salam should come to somebody like me. It is the night of Ashura. It's the night of Ashura. And Bibi Zainab comes into the tent of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and she says, oh my brother Hussein, you know that in the past the companions of your brother and your father and your grandfather, they left them at times of need. Have you tested your companions? Do you know that tomorrow on the day of battle they will be willing to sacrifice themselves? This conversation was going on that Habib passed from outside the tent. He went into the tents of the companions and he said, oh, the companions of Hussein, your loyalty is under question, your loyalty is under test. We have to go out and prove our loyalty. Habib takes all the companions. They come and they stand outside the tent of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Habib goes inside. He says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, I heard that our loyalty is being questioned. I heard that our loyalty is being questioned. He orders all of them. He says, put your swords on your neck. He says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, if you order us that we kill ourselves today, we will do it. And if we are brought back to life and then we die and this happens to us 70 times, we will do it as long as you are pleased with us. Ajrukum Allah. As long as you are pleased with us. Habib ibn Mudahir goes into the battlefield. He fights the battle of valiance. He eventually comes down. When he comes down from the horse, Imam Hussain alayhi salam and Muslim ibn Awsaja reach to him. Muslim ibn Awsaja says to Habib that, Habib, if I knew that I was going to survive you, I would ask you to make some wasiyat, some final will and testament. Habib ibn Mudahir, he's so weak from all the injuries of the arrows. He just gets up and he points to the Imam. He says, Usikum bihadha rajul. I only give you wasiyat to make sure that you die for Hussein. Ajrukum in Allah. After the battle of Karbala is finished, just a final sentence to mention. After the battle of Karbala is finished, and the caravan reaches Kufa, all the heads are placed on spears, and the head of Habiba was tied to the head of the horse. The son of Habib Qasim is in Kufa. When he sees that his father's head is there, he finds out who is the person who killed my father. He goes up to that person, he kills that person, he takes the head of his father, and he says, whosoever has an inheritor alive, they do not bear to see this happen to their father. I don't know how Imam Sajjad alayhi salam heard this statement. Ala la'natullahi على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our majlis. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq to do as our Imam salam in the way that it deserves to be done. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and